My name's Natalie Brooks. I'm 37, and for most of my adult life, I thought I was married to a decent man. Derek Brooks, marketing director, business traveler, good at smiling in meetings, bad at remembering anniversaries. He's the kind of man who looks trustworthy in a suit, which, I guess, was his best disguise. He told me he'd be gone for a week. Big client conference in New York, he said, while scrolling through emails like he was already too busy to look at me. I nodded, kissed his cheek, and thought nothing of it. A week without his mood swings sounded almost like self-care. The next morning, I was paying bills on our shared laptop when something popped up, an airline confirmation email. United Airlines. Flight to MIA. Miami, not New York. My stomach didn't drop, it just cooled. The same way it does when you realize the milk's been sour for a while, and you've been drinking it anyway. I clicked open the details. Round trip. 7 days. 2 checked bags. My husband only ever traveled light. Then I noticed the date, the same day he claimed he'd fly out for the conference. I checked his work calendar. Blank. No meetings, no conference. Just one lonely word written in his planner. Trip. I sat there for a long minute, staring at the screen. There it was. Not an argument, not suspicion, just proof. Cold, simple proof. I didn't text him. I didn't call. I just stared at the email until the words started to lose meaning. Then I took a screenshot, saved it in a hidden folder named Invoices, because even Betrayal looks better filed neatly. That night, he came home early, whistling. He said he was tired from prep meetings. He smelled like new cologne, one I didn't buy. He kissed my cheek and asked what was for dinner, like nothing had changed. I told him chili. He smiled and said, "Make it extra spicy." Oh, the irony. I watched him eat, talking about next week's business dinner. I asked him which hotel he'd stay at in New York. He mumbled something about the Marriott, then changed the topic to sports. That was the moment I knew he wasn't just lying. He was confident about it. Comfortable. Like he'd done it before. When he finished dinner, he put his plate in the sink and said, "You know, you're amazing for always keeping things together when I'm gone." I said, "That's what I do best, Derek." He smiled, kissed the top of my head, and went to shower. I sat at the table, staring at his half-empty glass of wine, thinking how some lies don't need confrontation, they just need confirmation. Before bed, I pulled up his flight details again. I looked at the seat number, the baggage info, everything. The truth of it all sat right there, neat and digital. He was flying to Miami for a week, with God knows who. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. I just felt quiet. The kind of quiet that happens before something smart, something sharp, something permanent. Because when a man lies that easily, he doesn't deserve a fight. He deserves precision. If you've ever caught someone lying straight to your face and stayed calm instead of exploding, tell me in the comments, how did you play it? And don't forget to subscribe for more true cheating stories and revenge stories that hit a little too close to home. He came out of the shower whistling again. Same tune. Same rhythm. Same confidence. I smiled at him, said goodnight, and turned off the light. The house was silent, but my mind wasn't. Somewhere between his fake yawn and his "I love you," I started thinking about the chili oil jar sitting on the kitchen counter and how sometimes the smallest things can change everything. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The kitchen was quiet, the kind of quiet that lets you hear your own thoughts, and I didn't like what mine were saying. The email still sat in my mind like a stone. Miami, 7 days, 2 bags. I poured coffee and stared at the jar of chili oil on the counter. The label was smudged, handwritten in black marker. Extra hot. I made it a few weeks ago for the restaurant, but somehow it looked different that morning. Brighter, sharper, almost inviting. I caught myself staring too long and laughed. "Get it together, Natalie," I muttered. "It's breakfast, not war." Oh. When Derek came down, he was already dressed like he wanted to impress the world. Crisp shirt, perfect watch, fake calm. He kissed my cheek and said, "You look tired." "I slept fine," I said. "Maybe you're just glowing from all that New York excitement." He smiled, the kind of smile men give when they think you're harmless. I wanted to frame it. Label it Exhibit A. After he left for work, I sat at the table with my coffee and called Jenna. She's the one friend who doesn't do fake sympathy. She answered half asleep. Morning, she groaned. Why do you sound like someone who just found a body? Not a body, I said. Just a husband. That woke her up fast. Okay, she said slowly. What happened? I told her. The email, the fake trip, the ticket to Miami. She didn't gasp or swear. She just went silent for a moment, then said, Don't burn your life, Nat. Burn his comfort. Meaning? I asked. Meaning you don't blow up. Not yet. You make him sweat first. Make him feel safe. Then let him find out he was never in control. That was Jenna. No drama. Just strategy. I spent the rest of the day moving through work like nothing was wrong. My restaurant manager asked if I was okay. I said I was just tired. In reality, my mind was replaying Derek's lies like background music. Every time I looked at my phone, I imagined his new business partner. Maybe she laughed too loud. Maybe she wore perfume that made him feel 25 again. I didn't care what she looked like. I only cared about how calm I could stay. That evening, Derek texted me, Book the hotel. We'll be busy all week. Don't worry if I can't call much. I typed back, Of course. Focus on work. He replied with a heart emoji. The irony made me snort. He'd stopped saying, I love you, months ago, but somehow found the energy to send cartoon hearts. I started writing a list in my notebook, not a revenge plan, not yet, more like observations. Lies sound smoother the second time. The guilty sleep well. The truth waits quietly. When Jenna stopped by after her shift, she brought takeout and a look that said she'd been thinking. So, she said, opening a box of noodles. What's the play? I'm not sure yet, I said. But I'm done being the woman who just finds out. She nodded. Good. Because men like Derek? They don't stop lying until something burns. We talked for hours, half about nothing, half about everything. By the time she left, I'd decided I wouldn't confront him. Not yet. Let him pack his suitcase. Let him rehearse his excuses. Let him build his lie so tall it can't stand on its own. That night, Derek came home with takeout sushi, all smiles and small talk. Thought you might want a break from cooking, he said. I smiled back. That's thoughtful. Head and down. He didn't notice that I didn't eat much. I was too busy studying him, the way he avoided eye contact when he mentioned conference calls, the way his hand lingered on his phone like it might explode if I touched it. When he finally went upstairs to pack, I followed a few minutes later under the pretense of bringing him laundry. He was folding shirts with military precision. I watched him pick out his tie, his cologne, his hotel, notepad, everything arranged, like he was starring in a commercial for honesty. He smiled over his shoulder. You okay, babe? I'm fine, I said. Just making sure you've got everything you need. I stood there, watching his hands move over the suitcase, the one that would soon hold more than just clothes. I could almost hear Jenna's voice in my head. Make him feel safe. Then let him find out he never was. When he zipped the bag closed, I smiled. You really are organized, Derek. He grinned. You don't get to my position by being sloppy. I nodded. Guess not. He walked past me, phone buzzing in his hand, a grin he tried to hide. Probably her. Probably the one he thought was worth lying for. I waited until he was in the shower before walking into the kitchen again. The jar of chili oil was still sitting there, glowing under the dim light. I picked it up, turned it slowly in my hand, and felt a strange calm settle over me. There was no anger left, just intention. He thought this was just another business trip. He had no idea he'd already packed the first ingredient of his own downfall. The night before his trip, the house felt too clean. Derek was upstairs checking his flight details, pacing around like a man rehearsing confidence. I could hear the zipper of his suitcase opening and closing, the sound of someone who believes the world still belongs to him. I stood in the kitchen with the chili oil jar on the counter. It looked harmless, a red glow trapped in glass. The smell was sharp, smoky, and familiar. I'd made it a few weeks ago for a new spicy pasta special at the restaurant. Back then, I thought it was just a flavor. Now it felt like a weapon disguised as sauce. I waited until I heard the shower running. Derek always played the same playlist when he showered, upbeat, expensive-sounding nonsense. That was my window. Upstairs, his suitcase sat open on the bed. I didn't have to search long. In the small side pocket, under his charger and deodorant, was a box of condoms still sealed. He hadn't even tried to hide it. That told me everything I needed to know about how little he thought of me. I sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, staring at the box, not shaking, not crying, just thinking. If betrayal had a sound, it wasn't shouting or breaking things. It was the faint pop of a lid unscrewing. The oil shimmered like it knew what it was about to do. I opened the condom box carefully, took one out, and dipped a cotton swab into the jar. Just a small amount, enough to sting, not scar. A lesson, not a crime. I traced the rim, the same way I used to rim cocktail glasses with lime and salt at my first restaurant job. Then I did another one. And another. Slow, deliberate. When I finished, I wiped everything down, put the box back exactly where it was, and closed the suitcase. My hands didn't even smell of chili anymore. Precision leaves no trace. I looked around the room, the folded shirts, the perfectly packed cologne, the man's world arranged in neat squares. Everything looked normal. But inside that suitcase, truth waited quietly. When Derek came out of the shower, he was humming, towel around his waist, the picture of self-satisfaction. "You all set for New York?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, running his hand through his hair. "Just need to pack my laptop." I smiled. "Don't forget sunscreen. Miami sun can be brutal." He froze for half a second, then laughed it off. "What?" "Nothing," I said. "Just thinking out loud." He shrugged and zipped up his bag. "I'll call you when I land." "I'm sure you will." He didn't hear the tone. Men like him rarely do. They live in a frequency of their own, somewhere between ego and ignorance. Later that night, when he was asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Not because I doubted what I'd done, I didn't, but because it was the first time in years that I'd taken back control. Not through anger, not through begging, but through clarity. The funny thing about revenge is that it doesn't always come from rage. Sometimes it comes from exhaustion, the kind that makes you calm, the kind that says, enough. I watched the digital clock blink from 1:59 to 2. In less than 12 hours, he'd be boarding his flight, smiling, thinking he'd fooled everyone. And I'd be here, making breakfast, pretending not to know that somewhere over the country, a man was sitting next to a woman who thought she'd won. In the morning, Derek woke early, dressed in his best executive casual, the outfit of a man who lies for a living. He kissed my forehead like he always did before trips. "I'll miss you," he said. I smiled up at him. "You always say that." He laughed, grabbed his suitcase, and rolled it down the hall. The sound of those wheels against the hardwood floor was oddly satisfying, like punctuation. At the door, he turned back and said, "Don't work too hard, okay?" "I'll try," I said. "And Derek? Be careful what you pack." He chuckled. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just travel advice." He winked, completely unaware of what those words really meant. When the door shut behind him, the house went still. The kind of stillness that only happens when something irreversible has begun. I walked back into the kitchen, poured myself coffee, and sat by the window. Outside, his car disappeared down the street, sunlight hitting the windshield. I stirred my coffee slowly and took a sip. The chili oil jar still sat on the counter, half full, glistening under the morning light. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness, not yet just balance. The scale had finally tipped back where it belonged. People think revenge is chaos, but it's not. It's order. It's control returning to the person who lost it. I rinsed the coffee cup, cleaned the counter, and went about my day like any other morning. No one would have guessed what had already been set in motion. The chili oil was back on the shelf where it belonged. The suitcase was gone, the lie was packed, zipped, and ready for takeoff. The morning air was cooler than usual, a small mercy in a week that felt heavier by the hour. Derek moved through the kitchen like a man on stage, coffee mug in one hand, phone in the other, pretending to be busy with client calls. He was humming again. Always humming when he was lying. I watched him from the counter, quietly measuring every small detail, the way he smiled too wide, how he avoided looking directly at me, how his suitcase sat perfectly by the door like it had somewhere better to be. He looked sharp, clean shave, new shirt, his favorite blue tie, the one I gave him on our 5th anniversary. The one he wore the first time he lied about working late. I never threw it out because I wanted to remember what deceit looks like when it's dressed up. He caught me staring and grinned. "You're gonna miss me, huh?" I nodded. "Sure. Who else is gonna leave wet towels on the bed?" He laughed, kissed my forehead, and went back to his coffee. I sat across from him at the table. "So, where's the conference this time?" He blinked. Midtown. Some hotel, forget the name. You know how it is, back-to-back meetings." I smiled. "Right. Just don't forget your sunscreen. The city's been getting bright lately." "Oh?" He froze for half a second, just enough for me to see it, but then chuckled. "You and your dad jokes. Someone's gotta keep you on your toes." He leaned in, kissed me softly, and said, "You're too good for me, Nat." I looked at him and said, "I know." He didn't hear the edge in my voice. He never did. He grabbed his bag and keys, checked his phone again, and said, "I'll text when I land." "Don't worry," I said. "I'll be right here." Hiversto. He wheeled the suitcase toward the door, and I followed, leaning on the frame as he opened it. "You sure you'll be okay alone for a week?" he asked. I smiled, small and calm. "I'm always okay." When the door shut, the silence fell, like snow, soft but absolute. I stood there a moment, listening to the faint echo of the wheels rolling across the driveway. Then I locked the door, turned back toward the kitchen, and exhaled for the first time all morning. The Nespresso machine clicked on automatically at 8, like it did every day, and the sound filled the house. For once, I didn't hate it. I poured myself another cup and sat by the window. Derek's car turned the corner at the end of the street, disappearing behind the trees. I stared at the empty driveway, feeling neither victory nor guilt, just calm. The kind that comes when you've already made peace with your decision. When you've been lied to long enough, you start realizing that silence isn't weakness, it's a weapon. It makes liars comfortable. And when they're comfortable, they stop paying attention. I checked my phone. No messages, no apologies. Just a notification from our shared calendar. Flight 327, 9:30 a.m., departure. Miami, not New York. The truth right there, dressed up like business. I didn't need to see him bored. I didn't need to confirm anything. The lie was already in motion, and the truth was already waiting inside his luggage. I opened my restaurant's group chat to check in with the staff. One of my chefs texted, "Morning, boss. You good?" I replied, "Perfect. Let's make it a good week." I went through the motions, emails, deliveries, schedules, but underneath it all was that steady hum of control. It wasn't happiness, but it was close enough. By noon, the house was spotless. His absence felt like fresh air. I lit a candle, played old jazz, and cooked lunch for one. Jenna texted, "He gone?" I typed back, "Just took off." Then she sent, "You okay?" I paused before replying, "Better than ever." I ate slowly, letting each bite settle. The world looked clearer. It's strange how calm things get once you stop chasing the truth and let it walk right into your hands. By afternoon, Derek's business trip began playing out exactly like I expected, text messages full of generic updates. Landed safe. Busy already. Meetings all day. Don't wait up. Love you, babe. Each one was a small performance, and I gave him what he wanted. Applause in the form of short replies. Glad you made it. Don't overwork yourself. Miss you too. He'd never noticed that I didn't include a heart. Liars rarely notice what isn't said. I spent that evening watching the sunset from the patio, the sky turning a slow, steady orange, the same color as the chili oil sitting on my kitchen shelf. I thought about how fragile people are when they believe they're safe, how Derek probably felt untouchable in some hotel suite miles away. The thing about lies is they need space to grow, and I was giving him all the space he needed. The phone buzzed again. A picture this time, dinner plates, champagne, city lights in the background. The kind of photo a business trip doesn't require. I stared at it, smiled, and whispered, "Enjoy your view, Derek." Ori. The candle flickered out on the counter, but I didn't move. I didn't need light to see the truth anymore. The house stayed still. The silence felt alive. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I wasn't the one being fooled anymore, he was. The third night after he left, the house felt too quiet. I sat on the couch with a glass of wine, the TV on mute, half watching a commercial I didn't care about. I checked my phone once, no messages. Not that I expected any. When men are busy lying, they usually forget to pretend they care. At 9:47 p.m., a text came through. Still in meetings, long day. Miss you. Meetings. In Miami. At nearly 10 at night. Sure. I stared at the message for a few seconds before hitting call. He answered on the second ring, his voice low and smooth like someone performing. Hey babe, can I call you back in a bit? I'm with clients right now. And, in the background, I heard the faint rhythm of a Latin song, the kind that makes you think of cocktails and ocean air. Then a laugh, a woman's laugh, high, careless and close. I said, clients, huh? Sounds like they're having fun. He coughed, faked a chuckle. Yeah, it's a team dinner. You know how these things go. Sure, I said, letting silence stretch between us. Don't forget sunscreen. What? Nothing. Enjoy the trip. I hung up. I didn't throw the phone or cry. I just let the silence return. There it was, proof in the form of background noise. You don't need to see someone cheat to know they are. Sometimes all it takes is hearing someone laugh in the wrong room. I got up, poured the rest of the wine into the sink, and walked to the kitchen. The chili oil jar sat on the shelf, glinting under the light. I didn't touch it. I didn't have to. My part was done. The rest would take care of itself. I cleaned the counter, wiped my hands, and opened my laptop. I wasn't looking for closure. I was looking for confirmation. The AirTag app opened with a single tap. The little gray dot appeared right where I knew it would. Miami, Florida. Near Collins Avenue, South Beach. The dot moved slowly across the map and stopped near a luxury resort. I zoomed in and read the name. The Fontainebleau. Expensive. Romantic. Not exactly where marketing conferences are held. A few seconds later, the dot didn't move at all. Stationary. Probably in a room. I took a screenshot and closed the app. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, and checked again. Same spot, same lie. He texted around noon. Heading into another meeting. Miami traffic's killing me. I replied, hope the weather's nice. He sent a thumbs up emoji. Jenna called later that afternoon. How's our little field experiment going? She asked. Predictable, I said. You talked to him? I heard the ocean. She laughed. Guess the conference moved to the beach. Yeah, it's a tough gig. Her tone softened. You okay? I'm good. I'm just observing. That's my girl, she said. Keep that energy. By Friday, I knew everything I needed to know. Derek had switched from short, formal texts to casual ones like he was forgetting the script. That's what guilt does. It makes liars sloppy. That evening, I checked his company's Instagram. They'd posted photos from the annual marketing summit. Location tag, New York City. I laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, but because of how perfectly stupid it all was. I opened a new browser tab and typed, the Fontainebleau Miami Beach reviews. The pictures were exactly what I imagined. Ocean views, champagne brunches, white sheets that probably smelled like betrayal. I didn't feel jealous. I felt informed. That night, while scrolling through my alternate account, I found it. Nicole Reed, 28, Public Relations. I recognized her from one of Derek's work parties a year ago. She was the girl who laughed too hard at his jokes. Her Instagram story showed a candlelit dinner for two, glasses clinking, no faces, just hands. His watch on the left wrist, hers with red nails on the right. She tagged the location. South Beach, Miami. I took a screenshot, then another, then set my phone down slowly. My pulse didn't spike. My hands didn't shake. The calm was almost unnerving. Later, while washing dishes, I caught myself smiling. Not because I was happy, but because the last puzzle piece had clicked into place. Every lie, every excuse at all, pointed to the same truth. He wasn't careful. He wasn't clever. He was just ordinary. And ordinary liars make the best lessons. The kitchen light flickered slightly, and I leaned against the counter, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. The whole house seemed to breathe with me, steady, unbothered. The phone buzzed again around midnight. Flights delayed. Might stay an extra day. I typed back, "Take your time. Enjoy the view." He replied with a heart emoji. I locked the screen, set the phone face down, and poured myself another glass of water. Outside, a soft wind moved through the backyard, rustling the trees. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to make the window tremble slightly. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let that sound fill the room. When people lie to you long enough, the sound of the truth starts to feel like peace. I didn't need to chase him, or prove anything. I already knew exactly where he was, who he was with, and what would happen next. The universe has its own way of setting fires. Mine just started with a jar of chili oil. Saturday morning came quiet and slow. I made coffee and checked the AirTag app like it was part of my routine now. The little dot was still there, Miami. Same resort, same lie holding steady. The GPS pin didn't move for hours, which probably meant he wasn't doing much networking. At 9, I went to open the restaurant. My manager, Liam, was already prepping tables. "You look different," he said. Relaxed. "Maybe I finally started sleeping," I told him. He nodded. "Good. You used to worry too much about everything." "Not anymore," I said, and it was true. By noon, between lunch orders and deliveries, my phone buzzed again. Derek had sent a photo of him in a linen shirt, sunglasses, fake grin. The caption read, "Quick break between sessions." Behind him, clear blue sky and palm trees waved their truth in my face. I zoomed in. No conference badge, no papers, no coworkers, just a beach. I showed Jenna when she came by for lunch. "He's really committing to the bit," she said, biting into her sandwich. "He should get an award," I said. "For acting or stupidity?" "Both." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "So what now?" "Now," I said. "We let the lie finish itself." That afternoon, I checked Nicole's social media again. Her story showed a hand with red nails holding a cocktail, the ocean in the background. Derek's watch reflected in the glass. I almost laughed. People who cheat love to document their crimes. They just think the world's too stupid to connect the dots. I saved the story and moved on with my day. I wasn't collecting evidence for drama. I was collecting it for satisfaction. There's a strange kind of comfort in knowing exactly what's real, even when it's ugly. Around sunset, I poured myself a drink and sat outside. The air was warm, the kind of calm that belongs to people who've already made their decision. I wasn't waiting for karma, I'd already built mine. He called later that evening. "Hey babe," he said, voice overly casual. "How's everything?" "Peaceful," I said. "You?" "Busy. You know how these conferences go." "I bet," I said. "How's the weather?" "Cold. Raining. I barely left the hotel." I smiled into the phone. "Sounds miserable." He laughed. "Yeah, wish you were here." "I'm sure you do." He didn't catch the tone. He never did. He just kept talking, rambling about fake meetings, half listened to my answers, and hung up saying he'd call tomorrow. When the call ended, I leaned back, stared at the night sky, and let out a small laugh. It wasn't joy, it was the sound of disbelief, finally turning into clarity. The next day, the AirTag moved. A new location popped up, Miami International Airport. Departure time 4:55 p.m. I waited an hour, checked again. The dot shifted north. Derek was on his way home. I wasn't nervous. If anything, I was curious. About how he'd act. About what version of himself he'd bring back. Men like him always come home pretending to be tired heroes. Before leaving for the airport, he texted, "Can't wait to see you, babe. Missed you like crazy." I stared at the screen and typed, "Me too." Then deleted it. Then typed again, "Drive safe." At the restaurant, Liam noticed my mood. "You sure you're good?" "I'm great," I said, just watching a story unfold. That evening, I got home early and started cooking. Nothing fancy, just chili, his favorite. The smell filled the house, rich and spicy. I set 2 bowls on the counter and waited. Not out of love, but precision. When the garage door opened, I didn't even flinch. Derek walked in with that same salesman smile, holding flowers from the airport gift shop, cheap, bright, and completely meaningless. "Hey, beautiful," he said, kissing my cheek. "God, it feels good to be home." "Must have been exhausting," I said, stirring the pot. "You have no idea. Meetings, flights, drama. I'm ready for peace." I handed him a spoonful of chili. "Then here's your piece." He tasted it, smiled. "Perfect as always." "Good," I said, watching him. "I used the special batch." He nodded, too distracted to notice the weight in my voice. We ate quietly. He talked about fake clients, fake presentations, fake exhaustion. I listened, nodding, filing away each lie like an accountant balancing a ledger. When dinner ended, he leaned back in his chair. "You really are my rock, Nat. I don't know what I'd do without you." End quote. "I'm sure you'd figure it out," I said. He laughed. "Nah, you're one of a kind." "Yeah," I said softly. "So are you." He got up, kissed the top of my head, and went to unpack. I watched him disappear upstairs with his suitcase, the same one that had left full of lies, and come back with something more. The house was silent again, except for the ticking clock in the kitchen. I cleaned the dishes, rinsed the spoons, and stared at my reflection in the window. For the first time in a long time, I liked what I saw, not the wife who believed everything, but the woman who finally stopped pretending she didn't see what was right in front of her. Upstairs, the faint sound of a zipper opening echoed down the hallway. I wiped my hands on a towel and smiled quietly to myself. Sometimes, the truth doesn't need witnesses. It just needs time to work. The next 2 days passed in slow, deliberate silence. Derek spent most of his time pretending to recover from his long week. He lounged on the couch, ordered takeout, and bragged about deals he never made. I didn't interrupt. I just watched the act play out. By the 3rd morning, I was at the restaurant when my phone rang. His name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but something told me it'd be worth hearing. "Nat?" His voice sounded off strained, uncertain. "Hey, you at work?" "I am," I said, keeping my tone even. "Everything okay?" He hesitated. Yeah. I think I caught something." "Caught something?" I asked. "Yeah. Some kind of rash or infection. It's burning like hell. I might go see a doctor." I could hear the panic under his forced calm. It was the sound of a man realizing the world didn't revolve around him after all. I leaned back in my chair, twirling a pen between my fingers. "Maybe it's something you picked up on your trip," I said. He went quiet. "What do you mean?" "You were gone a week, Derek. Different food, different environments. Who knows what you might have touched?" "I was careful," he said too quickly. "I'm sure you were," I said. He muttered something about calling back later and hung up. I set my phone down and smiled. Not a laugh, not satisfaction, just acknowledgement. The kind of smile you give when the truth finally does its job. At lunch, Jenna stopped by and caught me mid-grin. "What's that face?" she asked. "Just heard from Miami," I said. Her eyebrows lifted. "And?" "He's experiencing consequences." Jenna laughed. "Natural ones, I assume?" "Completely organic." We both laughed, quiet and knowing. She leaned in and said, "So what now? Confession? Showdown?" I shook my head. "No, he'll write his own ending." By afternoon, Derek texted again. "Doctor said allergic reaction. Might be something in the hotel laundry detergent." I typed back, "Or something else," then deleted it. Instead, I sent, "Feel better." He didn't reply. That evening, he came to the restaurant to pick me up, limping slightly. His face was pale, his shirt untucked, and there was a nervousness in his movements that wasn't there before. Guilt looks different when it starts to itch. He tried to act normal. "Rough day?" he asked as I grabbed my coat. "Not really. You?" He shrugged, winced. "Same. You should get that checked again," I said. "Sometimes what you think is an allergy turns out to be something deeper." He nodded quickly. "Yeah, maybe you're right." In the car, he drove with one hand, the other resting on his thigh. Every few minutes, he shifted uncomfortably. I stared out the window, letting the silence fill the space between us. When we got home, he went straight upstairs to the bathroom. I could hear the cabinet doors opening, the sound of frustration building. I poured a glass of wine and waited in the kitchen, the faint echo of his groan drifting down the stairs. He came down half an hour later, wearing sweatpants in defeat. "I think I'm allergic to something in Miami," he said. "The doctor gave me a cream, but it's not helping." "Maybe you should call the hotel," I said. "Ask what products they use. Or maybe it's from contact with something." He looked at me sharply. "You think it's an STD?" I took a sip of wine. "I think you'd know better than me." His face went red. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Just saying you were the one traveling." He opened his mouth, then closed it. The silence stretched. Finally, he muttered, "You're unbelievable," and stormed upstairs. I let him go. Some fights don't need words, they just need time to sting. That night, he didn't sleep. I could hear him shifting, tossing, mumbling. Around 3 a.m., he went downstairs to the guest room. I stayed where I was, staring at the ceiling, perfectly calm. By morning, he avoided my eyes. He made coffee, barely touched it, then mumbled something about working from home. The air between us was thick with everything we weren't saying. When I left for the restaurant, I stopped by his side of the table. "You know," I said lightly, "it's funny how quickly things burn when they're not built right." He looked up, confused. "What does that mean?" I smiled. "Just thinking out loud." End of 20. The day passed quietly. At dinner, he barely spoke. He kept scratching his wrist, fidgeting like a man with a secret that didn't fit anymore. That night, after closing up the restaurant, I sat in my car before driving home. The streetlights reflected off the windshield, and for a moment, everything felt still simple, even. I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Whatever needed to happen had already started. Revenge isn't about destruction. It's about balance. The universe doesn't always hand out justice, it just waits for you to tip the scale yourself. When I got home, he was asleep on the couch, his phone still glowing in his hand. A notification banner popped up. "Nicole, we need to talk." I stood there for a long moment, looking at the screen, then turned off the lamp. The house fell into darkness, quiet except for the faint sound of him shifting in pain. I walked upstairs, feeling the same calm I had the night I opened that jar of chili oil. The truth had finally begun to burn, and it didn't need my help anymore. When Derek finally walked through the door that evening, I almost didn't recognize him. His skin was pale, his jaw tense, and he had that twitch in his eye people get when they know their story's falling apart. He dropped his keys on the counter and stood there, pretending the silence between us was just another normal Tuesday. "Rough day?" I asked, without looking up from the sink. He let out a dry laugh. "You could say that. I'd say you look worse than your chili did last night." He smirked weakly. "Guess it didn't sit well with me." He tried to make it sound like a joke, but his tone gave him away. Guilt always cracks in the small talk. He went upstairs without another word, and the faint thud of his steps faded down the hall. I dried my hands, opened the drawer by the fridge, and pulled out the envelope I'd been saving. Inside were the printed hotel receipts, screenshots, and photos, the neat little package of his week-long business trip, everything labeled and dated like an accountant of betrayal. When he came back down, I placed the envelope on the kitchen table. He froze. "What's that?" "Expense report," I said calmly. "Thought you'd want to review it before you file for reimbursement." He didn't move, just stared at the envelope like it might bite. Then, cautiously, he sat down and opened it. The sound of paper sliding out filled the quiet. There were photos of the Fontainebleau's beachfront, his check-in email, Nicole's Instagram post, and one particularly damning hotel charge for 2 breakfast buffets. His fingers trembled slightly as he flipped through each page. Finally, he whispered, "You went through my stuff?" I raised an eyebrow. "You mean your public social media and the company email that comes to our shared account?" "Yeah. Wild move, I know. Induce Bay." He tried to laugh, but it came out broken. "You're insane." "No," I said, leaning forward. "You're sloppy." His mouth opened, then shut again. For once, he had no script to hide behind. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he asked. Me? I smiled slightly. You're the one who booked Miami. He pushed the papers away, standing too fast. You think you're so clever. I don't think, I said. I just read flight confirmations. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. The sound of his shoes against the tile was sharp and uneven. It wasn't what you think. Then what was it, Derek? A networking opportunity with bikinis and beachfront cocktails? He looked at me then, really looked, and for a moment I saw at the flash of realization that he'd finally met a version of me he couldn't lie to. I leaned against the counter. You said something before you left, remember? He blinked. You told me. You're too good for me. I paused. Turns out you were right. Heaven 40. His shoulders dropped, his voice small. Nat, I held up a hand. Don't. You'll just make it worse. For a long minute, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the refrigerator hum and the faint ticking of the wall clock. Then I said quietly, Next time, check your conscience before you check in. He looked down at the envelope, then back at me. Why didn't you say anything before I left? Because I wanted you to have your vacation, I said. You earned it. End of section. He stared at me, searching for something in my face. Anger, tears, anything. But I didn't give him either. Nat, he said finally, I'm sorry. I know, I said. You're always sorry when it burns. He opened his mouth, then stopped. The look on his face told me everything. The confusion, the suspicion, the creeping thought that maybe the pain wasn't just emotional. You look uncomfortable, I said softly. Maybe you should see a doctor. He swallowed hard. You knew. He tilted my heel. About Miami? Of course. No, he said, voice trembling now. You did something. I smiled, not big, not cruel, just enough to let him feel the truth between us. I didn't do anything, Derek. You packed the lies. I just added the flavor. He went still, completely still. For a second, I thought he might laugh, but he didn't. He just stood there, breathing hard, eyes darting between me and the jar of chili oil sitting on the counter. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. You're serious? I shrugged. You always said you liked things spicy. He backed away slowly, muttering something I couldn't catch, and stumbled into the hallway. The sound of his footsteps on the stairs was uneven, heavy. I stayed where I was, arms crossed, staring at the half-empty jar. It sat there quietly, catching the kitchen light, innocent as ever. After a few minutes, I picked up the envelope, placed it neatly on the table, and poured myself another glass of water. The air smelled faintly of smoke from the chili I'd cooked earlier, sharp and warm. Derek's suitcase was still open by the stairs, his shirt spilling out like evidence. I didn't touch it. Instead, I sat down and wrote something on a small sticky note. When I finished, I stuck it on the front of the envelope. 3 words, for your records. Then I turned off the lights and went upstairs. The house felt lighter somehow, as if the walls had finally exhaled. No yelling, no slammed doors. Just quiet truth, burning exactly where it needed to. The next morning, the smell of coffee filled the kitchen before I even came downstairs. Derek was already there, sitting at the table, hands wrapped around a mug like he needed something to hold on to. His eyes were red, not from lack of sleep, but from shame or fear. Maybe both. He looked up when I walked in. We need to talk, he said quietly. I poured myself coffee, not answering right away. The silence stretched long enough to make him uncomfortable. Finally, I said, About what? The flight miles, or the medical bills? He flinched. Natalie, please. I don't know what's going on between us anymore. I sat down across from him. You mean between you, me, and your girlfriend? He pressed his lips together, the kind of tight line people make when they realize their usual charm won't save them. It wasn't. Don't, I cut in. Don't embarrass yourself more than you already have. He stared at me, like he was seeing me for the first time. Maybe he was. Men like Derek always confuse silence with weakness, until it's the only thing they can hear. After a long pause, he said, Why did you do this to me? The corner of my mouth lifted slightly. Do what? You know what I mean, he snapped, the desperation finally leaking through. Whatever you did to me, it's not normal, Nat. It hurts like hell. You could have just left. I leaned forward, my tone calm, almost conversational. I didn't do anything to you, Derek. You packed the lies. I just added the flavor. For a second, he didn't react. The words hung in the air like smoke. Then his face changed realization, followed by disbelief, and then fear. You're joking, he said. I took a slow sip of coffee. Am I? He pushed back his chair, standing so fast it scraped against the floor. You're insane! No, I said. I'm detailed. He started pacing, running both hands through his hair. You could go to jail for that. Oh, relax. You didn't die. You just got a little burned. His jaw tightened. You think this is funny? I think it's honest. Allard. He stared at me for a long time, like he was searching for some trace of the woman he used to control. But the thing about betrayal is that it burns away the version of yourself that tolerated it. What's left is someone who doesn't need to raise her voice to be terrifying. Finally, he muttered, You've changed. Yeah, I said. I started paying attention. He walked toward the counter, probably to grab his keys, but his hand hesitated. His eyes flicked to the chili oil jar still sitting there. He froze. Is that? I interrupted softly. Careful, it's strong. He took a step back, breathing unevenly. You need help. I have help, I said. I have peace. He shook his head and laughed one of those short, empty laughs people give when they're completely lost. You're unbelievable. That's what you said when we met, I said. I just finally lived up to it. The front door opened suddenly. Miles, one of his coworkers, stepped in holding a manila folder. He stopped dead when he saw us. Sorry, Derek, he said, awkwardly shifting his weight. Didn't know you were, busy. Derek's voice came out tight. What are you doing here, Miles? HR sent me, Miles said. They need your signature. Something about reimbursement claims. I watched Derek's shoulders tense. What claims? He asked, his voice thin. Miles looked uncomfortable. The Miami expenses. They're flagging them for review. The silence that followed was beautiful. Even Miles seemed to feel it, glancing between us before mumbling, I'll just leave this here, and backing out of the room. Derek dropped into the chair again, his hands shaking slightly. He didn't even look at me this time, just stared at the folder like it might explode. I finished my coffee, rinsed the mug, and said, You really should have used your own credit card. He didn't respond. He just sat there, the weight of everything finally landing on him, every lie, every careless choice. I wiped the counter with a cloth, neat and calm, like this was any other morning. You know, I said quietly, I used to think betrayal was about the other person, but it's really about what it does to you, how it rewires your peace. He looked up then, eyes glassy. You're enjoying this? No, I said simply. I'm remembering it. He blinked, confused. Remembering what? What truth feels like. He didn't have a comeback. He just stared at me, breathing through his nose, trying to figure out if he was more angry or scared. Probably both. The air in the room thickened. Outside, a car door slammed, a sound so ordinary it almost felt staged. Derek's phone buzzed on the table. He didn't pick it up. The screen flashed a name before it dimmed again. Nicole. His hand twitched. He reached for it, then stopped. The phone went dark. I turned to leave the kitchen. You should answer her, I said without turning around. She's probably wondering why it burns. He didn't follow me. He didn't say another word. Upstairs, I could hear the faucet running as I washed my hands. The water turned warm, then hot, then scalding, and I let it. It didn't hurt. It reminded me that sometimes, what burns isn't destruction. It's proof that you can still feel. Downstairs, the house stayed quiet. The only sound left was the faint hum of a man realizing that the truth doesn't scream. It just waits. By Thursday, the house was quiet again, but something in the air had shifted. Derek started leaving early, coming home late, speaking less. It wasn't guilt anymore. It was survival mode. Every sound in the house made him twitch. Every notification made him flinch. I didn't ask questions. I didn't have to. I could tell the world outside our kitchen walls had started closing in on him. That morning, while I was prepping invoices at the restaurant, my phone buzzed. It was Jenna. You might want to check the news, she said. The news? I asked. She chuckled. Corporate gossip counts as news. Your husband's company's trending on LinkedIn. I pulled up the article. Hawthorne Marketing Director under internal review for expense misconduct. The image was a grainy photo of Derek at some old company retreat, smiling, confident, wearing that same blue tie he'd taken to Miami. The short paragraph underneath said everything. An internal audit revealed questionable spending linked to personal travel during a corporate conference period. I stared at the screen for a while, coffee untouched beside me. My first thought wasn't pride. It was clarity. Lies always age badly. When I came home that afternoon, Derek was already there, sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open and his hands in his hair. His phone kept buzzing, one call after another. He didn't answer any of them. You're home early, I said casually. He didn't look up. They suspended me. For what? I asked, pouring myself water. He looked at me then, and I could see the storm behind his eyes. Someone sent HR my receipts, from Miami. I tilted my head. You don't say. He slammed the laptop shut. This isn't funny, Nat. I could lose everything. I leaned against the counter. You mean the job you got by pretending to be a decent person? His jaw clenched. You think you're better than me? No, I said. Just cleaner. He rubbed his temples, muttering to himself. They said there's an anonymous report. Someone attached screenshots, photos, everything. How could they even get that? I shrugged. Maybe the same way I got your flight info. His head snapped up. You did this? I smiled faintly. I didn't send anything. I just didn't delete it. He stood abruptly, knocking over his chair. You've ruined my life. Yeah. I looked at him, calm as ever. No, Derek. You did that the minute you bought sunscreen. He froze, the line hitting harder than I expected. Then, quietly, he said, You're enjoying this. No, I said. I'm remembering it. There's a difference. He started pacing, pulling at his hair. They're going to open an investigation. HR, accounting, maybe even legal. I could be blacklisted. Then maybe next time, I said. Don't bill your mistress's cocktails to your company card. I capsule. His face flushed with anger, but his voice broke halfway through. You don't understand, Nat. That job was my identity. That's the problem, I said. You treated everything like it was yours. To take your job, your reputation, your marriage. Now you're learning none of it was free. He went silent, the kind of silence that doesn't wait for comfort. I walked over, picked up his fallen chair, and set it upright. You know, I said softly, I didn't need to expose you. I just let the truth find its way out. You've been leaking it for years. He didn't respond. He just sat there, staring into space, the weight of his own story finally pressing down. That evening, Jenna texted again. Saw the update. He's officially out. HR called it voluntary resignation. Voluntary. I almost laughed. That's the corporate word for cornered. When Derek came downstairs later, his tie was gone, his shirt half unbuttoned, his voice quieter. They want me to sign a non-disclosure, he said. Good for them, I replied. You always loved paperwork. This isn't a joke, he said, voice cracking. No, I said. It's a lesson. He sat down heavily. What happens now? Now? I said. You start telling the truth. For once. He looked at me, eyes glassy, searching for pity. I didn't give him any. The night dragged on. He made a few calls, each shorter than the last, his tone more desperate each time. At one point, I heard him say, It's not what it looks like. And I couldn't help but think that's exactly what it always is. By 10, he was sitting on the couch in the dark, staring at nothing. I passed by with a cup of tea and paused. You know, I said, peace doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from clarity. And I've never been clearer. He didn't answer. Maybe he couldn't. I went upstairs, leaving him in the quiet glow of the TV. The screen showed some commercial smiling families, beach vacations, the kind of lies people pay for. From the hallway, I could hear him finally whisper under his breath, What did I do? The answer didn't need to be said. It was already living in every corner of the house, The silence, the envelope, the jar of chili oil still sitting by the sink. Some truths don't end in screaming. They end in recognition. And watching a man who built his life on lies finally meet himself, that's all the closure I'd ever needed. The night stayed still. The clock ticked softly. Somewhere downstairs, Derek's phone buzzed again, but he didn't pick up. This time, he didn't even flinch. The morning after Derek's voluntary resignation, the house felt lighter. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean, honest, almost refreshing. He didn't come down for breakfast, and I didn't call him. There was nothing left to say. When trust dies, conversation just becomes noise. I poured coffee, opened my laptop, and searched Divorce Attorney Denver. The name Daniel Harper caught my eye. His reviews all said the same thing: calm, discreet, efficient. Exactly what I needed. When I met him later that week, he looked over my file like he'd seen 100 versions of my story before. "You don't want alimony?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, I just want what's mine." He smiled slightly. "You're rare. Most people want revenge." "I already had mine," I said. "Now I want peace." He nodded once, like he understood the language beneath the words. "Then peace is what we'll get." Back home, Derek was sitting on the couch staring at nothing. The TV was on mute, some commercial flashing bright colors against his blank expression. There was a pile of unopened mail on the coffee table, final bills, bank statements, his severance paperwork. "You went somewhere?" he asked, voice dull. "Yes," I said. "Lawyer." He blinked, like the word took a second to register. "You're serious?" "Completely." He rubbed his face with both hands. "You don't have to do this." "I really do." He stood up suddenly. "I made mistakes, Nat, but people fix things. We can fix this." I looked at him, calm and steady. "You don't fix something that was never real." He froze, mouth open, words stuck behind guilt. For a long moment, he just stood there, shoulders sagging. Finally, he whispered, "So that's it?" "Yes," I said softly. "That's it." Over the next few weeks, the divorce papers moved through the system like clockwork. Derek signed everything quietly, no fights, no courtroom drama. Maybe he was too tired to argue, or maybe he finally realized that silence could be louder than shouting. One afternoon, Daniel called me into his office. "Everything's finalized," he said. "You keep the restaurant, the house, and full control of your assets." He's not contesting. I nodded, feeling the kind of calm that comes only after a storm. "Thank you." He leaned back in his chair. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "How did you stay this calm through all of it?" I smiled faintly. "Because anger burns fast. But truth burns slow. It lasts." When I left his office, the sun was shining, and for the first time in years, I noticed it. The warmth didn't feel like something borrowed. It felt earned. Back home, Derek's car was gone. He'd started staying with a friend, or maybe a motel I didn't ask. The only trace of him left in the house was a tie hanging in the closet, the same blue tie from every lie. I folded it neatly and dropped it into the donation box by the door. That evening, Jenna came by with a bottle of wine. "So, Mrs. Free Woman," she said, grinning. "How's it feel?" "Strange," I admitted. "Quiet, but strange." "That's freedom," she said. "It always feels weird at first." We clinked glasses. She took a sip and leaned back. "You ever think he knows what really happened? The chili thing?" I shrugged. "Maybe, maybe not. But I think about it this way. He felt the burn, one way or another." She laughed so hard she almost spilled her drink. "You're evil." "No," I said, smiling. "I'm fair." We spent the evening talking about everything but him. The future, the restaurant, new recipes. For once, the conversation wasn't about surviving, it was about living. The next morning, I woke up to an email from the bank. The joint account had been closed. Derek had withdrawn what was left of his share and left a single line in the note field. "Good luck, Nat." I replied with nothing. Some endings don't need punctuation. Later that day, Daniel sent the final divorce decree to my inbox. The subject line read, "Case closed." I stared at it for a while before hitting archive. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. It just felt done, like closing a door that should have been locked years ago. At the restaurant, the lunch crowd came and went. Liam looked at me between orders and said, "You seem different." "I am," I said. "I finally own everything I built." And I meant it. The restaurant wasn't just a business anymore, it was proof that something good could survive the worst kind of betrayal. That night, I drove home with the windows down. The air was cool, the city quiet. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw the porch light flicker, a small, ordinary thing, but it felt symbolic somehow. Light returning where it belonged. Inside, I poured a glass of wine and sat at the counter. The chili oil jar was still there, half full, sealed tight. I hadn't touched it since that night. I picked it up, turned it slowly under the kitchen light, and said to no one in particular, "Closure tastes better than revenge. If you." Then I placed it back on the shelf, washed my hands, and started cooking something new. The kitchen filled with the sound of simmering and the faint rhythm of quiet music. It didn't sound like victory. It sounded like peace. If you enjoyed this story and want more real, powerful revenge stories about strength, truth, and quiet justice, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring you more stories that remind the world. Sometimes, the calmest voices carry the sharpest truth.